For an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Well, if we do say so and give ourselves a pat on the back, stellar lineup on the show this evening. We will get some reaction in a moment with Kieran Cunningham to the MTK Global announcement ceasing all business at the end of the month. We have Tommy Welch talking hurling around 7:30. Jerry Thornley, Andy Dunn on Wednesday Night Rugby after 8 o'clock. We have the Republic of Ireland captain, Katie McCabe, on the show after 8:40, explaining why she doesn't want to move the Finland game to the Aviva Stadium. And then from 9, the football show, Dan McDonald with us. Live football, including Man City in action this evening. And then Mark Lawrenson will be on as well, talking Liverpool 4, Manchester United 0. 53106, the text number. Add off the ball on Twitter. Stellar lineup, you said? Well, I hadn't mentioned. Adrian Barry, hello.
Hey, Joe.
And Richie McCormack, how you doing?
Well.
4-0, perhaps the most predictable scoreline of all time, Adrian Barry. It was always going to be a case of how many?
Yeah. There's nearly a giddiness, wasn't it? Like, even during the game last night, following as everybody does now on social media and in the commentary, and there's nearly a giddiness now about how bad United are. They're brutal.
Truly brutal, Richie. You predicted the odd goal last night, and you weren't hopeful of Manchester United either, but the odd goal and then some.
I just had a feeling, because I guess based on nothing more than the fact that it's Manchester United and it's Manchester United away to Liverpool, and we're at a point in the season whereby teams and rivalries like this can often cause a bit of an upset or a bump in the road for a team that are chasing the league. But what struck me about last night's game, particularly in the second half, and particularly during that moment where Liverpool really took their foot off the pedal to such a degree that United were getting half chances, was the atmosphere at Anfield was so comparatively flat for a Liverpool-Manchester United fixture, and was so, I could only deduce, because the opposition, and this is on either side of the ball, but in this instance it's Manchester United. The first time I can remember the opposition being the reason for a flat atmosphere, and that being because they're just so bad and there were no threat. And atmospheres like those games, they thrive on threat, and they thrive on the sense that, we might be better than them, but they can land a punch at any moment. United never looked like they could land a punch at any moment. They looked so bereft of pretty much anything. And we kind of went through the starting 11 last night wondering, how does a team that's spent this much get a starting 11 this bad? And then you get the results that, ultimately comes as absolutely no surprise from a team that bad. But we can't forget, in what is supposedly the best league in the world, we're told over and over again, they could end up being the 4th best team this season. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility. And that, I think, is almost a bigger problem than the kind of microcosm of Manchester United issues at the moment, that seemingly this is the 4th, 5th or 6th best team in England, and they can't lay a glove on one of the top 2.
Of the purple patch after half-time, I was trying to think, Adrian, maybe there was some tactical shift here and well, I say purple patch, sorry, not being terrible, not having the absolute snot beaten out of them at all moments, but a chance or two. I was thinking maybe tactically that shift to the 4-2-3-1 and Jones off, and maybe there was something there that they could have done from minute 1. Paul Scholes was on the Premier League coverage, not the Sky coverage, and he was saying it was disgusting to watch Manchester United. Like, it was just a bit like Roy Keane. He wasn't angry anymore, he was just sad about the whole thing. But just at the end he added, and by the way, those 15 minutes after the second half, don't think for a second that was United being good. Liverpool were bored. They were just bored. That's how bad United were. And I thought, okay, maybe that's the explanation.
Look, I think that's Paul Scholes knows a lot more about football than any of us, and certainly me, but I think that's almost doing Liverpool a disservice in a way. But they did look better for a little while. The shape, like the Ranić stuff, like you talk about the shape, Joe, and it getting a bit better after half time. And Shane Keegan was pointing out on Twitter last night about the shape when they concede that breakaway goal, and you knew the second, was it Robertson and Salah had broken on the right hand side? Yeah. You just knew straight away. I was watching it with the 5-year-old, and I just said to him, "This is a goal, guaranteed." And sure enough, like, ripping a team like that asunder, and you've all the usual names tracking back. But the Ranić stuff for me, God, I'm feeling sympathy for him. I have to say, like, he's
dreadful. He is a dreadful manager. He's out of his depth. He's never worked with talent like this before. His 4-2-2-2 business was nonsense. It's all nonsense. Honestly, he was a shocking appointment.
I'm feeling sympathy for him in the way that I would felt sympathy for Steve Staunton during his Ireland reign, because like he's been trotted out to the media to explain this stuff, and as bad as he may well be, none of it is really of his making. Like, this is years and years and years of desperate transfer policies, and I know there's talk of some movement in that from today, but like, it's just embarrassing. He gets asked last night about like why they concede that goal that I was talking about, and he wants to say, I don't know, I told them to hold the shape and they jump out past the halfway line, and he kind of has to sit there and bite his tongue. And he's also such a total lame duck. I know it's an expression that's been lashed around today, but the interviews are so utterly pointless. Every time it flashes up, Ralph Rangnick, Manchester United interim manager, it just takes any essence out of it entirely. And look, at him doing interviews is not the essence of the point, but it just does really make you wonder what the hell is going on at that club. I mean, the problems run deep.
We have fallen into the... sorry, go on.
2 windows, Joe. He said 2 windows, by the way. This is fixable in 2 windows to get competitive with Liverpool, which amongst all the madness and stuff should not get lost, because, I mean, look, maybe there is something in that. Maybe 2 windows would fix it, but 2 windows stacked full of brilliant decisions, the evidence of which have been nowhere to be seen over the last 7 years.
They're going to be the 2 greatest windows you've ever seen in your life. Let me tell you that. We have fallen into the terrible trap, and Sky did it, and everyone does it because what's happening is kind of compelling in a grim sort of way of not acknowledging how amazing Liverpool were. It's like, I mean, Thiago jumps to mind on several occasions. It was just outrageous again. So we will do that with Mark Lawrenson, who's on the way between 9 and 10. But I do want to kick on because Kieran Cunningham is waiting very patiently for us. And the Newsround is brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Richie, you're starting with the main sports story, I suppose, of the afternoon.
Yeah, as you heard from Quishak there in the main bulletin, MTK Global believe they've faced unfair scrutiny following the sanctions imposed upon the management company's co-founder Daniel Kinahan. They are to cease trading at the end of this month, saying that leading promoters no longer want anything to do with the management company. MTK continue to insist that Kinahan has had no direct involvement with them since 2017 and will focus now on finding new partnerships, they say, for their boxers. Their stable includes the WBC heavyweight champion Tyson Fury, who is, of course, in action this coming weekend, and once again at a press conference did not face any questions about his advisor.
The show is booked up to its eyelids this evening, but we do want to try and squeeze in some discussion of this. So to that end, Kieran Cunningham, Chief Sports Writer of the Irish Daily Star, joins us here on the Newsround. Kieran, thanks for the time.
No problem, Jim.
We wondered what the consequences of the Dublin City Hall press conference last week might be. This is significant.
No, it's very significant, and I think it's only the start of something. I think there will be more dominoes that will fall in the weeks and months to come. Like, if you look at that MTK Global statement, they head out on what they called unfair scrutiny, and the big problem with this story is there hasn't been anywhere near enough scrutiny of MTK Global and their rise. And, if the scrutiny had been both from the media and from the supposed authorities had been in place earlier on, they mightn't have got as powerful as they are. Now, MTK Global, just to fill in people who don't realise how powerful they are, they're in 15 different countries, in 25 different cities, over 200 boxers, including world champions, Olympians, guys who look like being future world champions, and women as well who look like future world champions. And it had a lot of power. Like, if you talk to people in UK boxing, for example, it was very hard to put on a card or a boxing night without having an MTK involved. So their tentacles were everywhere. And this, I think this is the start, because there was the Americans getting involved obviously changed the game, because the sanctions are so far reaching and they're such a powerful nation. Like, I cannot remember anything like last week of an ambassador announcing a ransom, a multi-million-dollar ransom for somebody who's heavily involved in sport. It's unprecedented. And there are a lot of other companies around boxing. I'm not going to name any of them, but there's been talk about them. There's not just one, there's quite a few. And they seem to have connections to Daniel Kinahan. And I think they will be investigated, and they could be in trouble soon. Like, there's a perception out there of MTK will just reinvent itself under another name. That will not happen. I think that's gone. I think Kinahan is finished in boxing. Kinahan's priority now is to stay out of the authorities' hands. And keeping involved in boxing would be way down his list. This is a big change.
Yeah, it really is. It's been the most extraordinary rise and fall. 2012, this company was set up as a gym initially. By 2015, they had 100 plus boxers. Fighters like Tyson Fury come along. Post Regency in 2017, Kinahan sells the company. And then, you know, in the statement today, MTK, they say, and this, by the way, it's all that is left of their website, their entire website, which I was on just a week ago, looking at the various fighters they represented, and it had numerous sections, is entirely defunct now and disappeared, bar this single statement, which everybody has read at this stage. Within the statement, they say, Mr. Kinahan's involvement in MTK ceased in 2017, and despite repeated reassurances in this regard, unfounded allegations about his ongoing association with us and our fighters persist. Like not so long ago, Sandra Vaughan had a video talking about how he was still advising MTK fighters and recommending MTK to other fighters who weren't yet signed up with them. And now they have the gall to come out and contradict that in their closing statement here. They are on the record as saying he was still advising their fighters.
Yeah, and last week, Bob Arum, the CEO of Top Rank, he gave an interview to the Irish Mirror, and he said that MTK was still very much a Kinahan company, and that it always had been. And Bob Arum is somebody who's been involved in boxing 60 years, and he's been very public on his dealings with Kinahan and MTK. So one thing you notice when you cover this story over the years is a lot of people lie to you. They lie to you blatantly. They tell you one thing that very quickly becomes clear is not the truth. You know, and they do a U-turn then and say, oh, we meant something else. So we had the situation with MTK a couple of years ago, said he has no involvement at all. And then they had to admit just days later, oh, he advises some of our fighters. So he had an involvement. But we've had this all along. There's so many different occasions during this story that people have lied to your face.
Yes. Could I ask you one last question about Probellum, this company that many of us were not fully aware of until last week when it came up at Dublin City Hall? Yeah. So Probellum, boxing promotion company, they came out in the last few days and denied any connection between the company and Daniel Kinahan. Richard Schaefer there, he was talking, for instance, in this instance, to BBC Sport, and he said in the last few days, any fighter on Probellum's books would need to cut ties with Kinahan, otherwise the company would not promote them. So he said if a fighter has a business relationship, and he included advisory under business, if a fighter has a business relationship with Daniel Kinahan, we will not promote him. Now, the trademark for Probellum was registered by MTK Global initially, and not so long ago, a Pakistani politician had a picture of himself and Daniel Kinahan, and he said that he had been meeting Probellum that very day, as in Kinahan equals Probellum, which Probellum said he was incorrect about. So talk to us about Probellum, because Eurosport in the last 24 hours has pulled the broadcasting of Probellum fights. It had a 5-night deal, and it was due to have one of those nights this Friday, and they've pulled that. Eurosport have pulled that. So to explain Probellum to us, Kieran.
Yeah, well, it's probably was quite a few months ago that people started taking notice of Probellum and wondered was a connection to Kinahan and MTK Global. And the reason was that so many MTK boxers were appearing and were being announced on Probellum. There seemed to be a crossover. Like the people seem to be involved in both MTK and Probellum. So we were wondering, was there a connection? And a few years ago, I was looking into the ownership of MTK, like who exactly is done as the owner of Company's House. And the name of a guy called Ronan Cruz came up. But he got in touch with me. He had registered a company called MTK Global, but he said, no, that's a different, it's not the MTK Global, as kind of a promotional company related to it. And this is that MTK Global promotions company that he set up, then renamed itself as Probellum, and MTK had MMA fights under the umbrella of Probellum.
Okay.
Now, Probellum, the company that we're talking about now, say that's a complete coincidence that they registered their name in Delaware and they just liked the name. That's what they actually said. So it's a lot of things you're told there by these people. You're told to take them on trust, but they seem very curious.
Okay. We'll come back to it. We're tight for time this evening, but thanks so much for coming on at short notice. Thanks, Kieran.
No problem.
Kieran Cronin there, Chief Sports Writer with the Irish Daily Star. I'm sure on tomorrow's OTB AM the lads will follow up on this development as well, as you can imagine. We're progressing through the news round with Richie McCormack and Adrian Barry. Richie, very interesting story from Wimbledon.
Yeah, the All England club today confirming that Russian and Belarusian players are banned from competing at Wimbledon this year. They say it's their responsibility to help limit Russia's global influence. Russian and Belarusian players are still allowed to compete on the major tours under neutral flags, but today's decision means the men's number 2, Daniil Medvedev, and women's number 4, Aryna Sabalenka, will be forced to miss Wimbledon in June. Organisers of the men's main tour, the ATP, have criticised the decision, saying discrimination based on nationality constitutes a violation of the agreement that players' entry is based solely on rankings.
Adrian, thoughts? Wimbledon taking a stand. No neutral flags, no competing in any respect whatsoever if you're simply born in Russia or born in Belarus.
Yeah, and the first Grand Slam event to do it, so it takes a bit of cojones, no matter what you're viewing it, one way or the other. They've come out, they've taken a view on it. They have slightly left the door ajar. Like, I mean, nothing changes there, right, over the next few months from everything we've seen so far in terms of the attack on Ukraine. So I don't expect anything to change in that regard. But it does sound like, reading around it this afternoon, the ATP aren't done on it. They were talking about the decision being a violation of their agreement with Wimbledon to ban players based on nationality, which is kind of, I mean, I guess on one level it is what's happening, but it does brush under the carpet the greater context for everything else that's going on. I think is there 9 players across in the top 40 across both the men's and women's draws. Would Medvedev be fit or not? I'm not sure. So who knows in that front? But it does remove the stink of, like, if those players take to the court, I'm sure this has been a talking point for the people who are organising Wimbledon. Like, if those players take to the court over the course of the tournament, the reception they're going to get is probably going to be pretty flat at best. There's probably going to be a bit of upset from the bleachers, I would assume, as well. So they've removed all of that. But yeah, look, they've taken a stance. They had choices. The other Grand Slam events have not yet gone down that road. So, is it the right thing to do, Joe? Is that the question?
I guess it is, yeah.
And I guess it is the right thing to do. Like,
you won't find a competition more obsessed with optics than Wimbledon. Like, the fact that everybody still has to play in white kind of speaks volumes towards that. But they are literally obsessed with their image more than Roland Garros are, more than the USTA are with the US Open, and more than, you know, the Australians are with the Aussie Open. Like, they are obsessed with how Wimbledon is viewed, and they do not want any questions about, you know, nefarious goings on or whether or not somebody supports Putin or not competing at their tournament. And they've taken this step now as being part of the ATP tour, essentially, in the WTA tour. They kind of have stoked the flames, and they could face a bit of backlash from the players here, because there are so many populating the women's top 20. I think it's 3 of the top 20 are either Russian or Belarusian. You've got Sabalenka there, Victoria Azarenka, and Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova is from Russia. And then Rublev, Medvedev, and Karen Khachanov are inside the top 25 or 6 for the men. So you've got 6 major players there who aren't going to be involved, and they may well have allies that say, listen, they're going to compete as neutrals. You're not essentially raising flags over Wimbledon, let them go on. But I think it's a very firm line in the sand. It'd be interesting to see if the French Tennis Association follows suit in the next couple of weeks. I don't think they will, but it gives them a big question to ask themselves and possibly answer in the next 2 weeks or so.
Yeah. Juan, what do you think, Rich? Right thing to do?
Do you know what? I find it very hard to say it's a right or wrong thing to do. I kind of admire that Wimbledon have taken a stand and said this far out, listen, we can't have the potential of Russians succeeding, because Medvedev, I guess, is the person that everybody's pointing to here, and perhaps even Sabalenka as well, given Belarus's proclivities. But like, I genuinely find it hard to come down either side of this one and say it's absolutely right or it's absolutely wrong. I think it's such a grey area, given the fact that the likes of Rublev have essentially come out in as much as he can without being locked away in Siberia for the next 10 years. He's come out against the war. I would imagine there are others, obviously, who aren't for it, but you know, you can't be relying on them to be vocal against something. There actually needs to be a stance taken here. And this is essentially, like, we've applauded Haas for getting rid of young Mazepin from their roster in Formula One. This is essentially what Wimbledon are doing, the exact same thing, and just saying, no Russians, no Belarusians. We'll talk about it potentially in June or definitely next year. But for this year, we're taking the white berths. I admire their stance, but I can't say, it's not for me to say whether it's right or wrong, you know?
So, Sean Cronin.
Yeah, the latest Leinster player to confirm their impending retirement, the ex-Ireland hooker, will hang up his boots for the final time at the end of this season. Cronin has won 2 Heineken Champions Cups, a Challenge Cup and 6 Pro League titles during his time with Leinster. Previously, of course, he was at Connacht and Munster before that. He earned the last of his 72 international caps during the 2019 Rugby World Cup.
Yeah, there's a few texts in. Somebody on Sean Cronin. Great servant, over 70 caps for Ireland, never started, it seemed, always reliable player in a great era. Yeah, I mean, geez, there were times where he was running at defences and moving very fast, and you thought, God, this guy's incredible. 70 caps is a great innings. You kind of wondered if he was unfairly labelled super sub, and that stuck, and he was a great impact off the bench. I mean, he still had a hell of a career. On Ralph Rangnick, Ralph was on a hiding to nothing, in fairness. On the other hand, he didn't seem to make any impression in the dressing room. Overall, you can have the eggs and the frying pan, but if you can't ignite the fire in the kitchen, then it's not where you should be, says Kieran in Dublin.
That's Eddie O'Sullivan texting in under pseudonym, isn't it?
Mick outside just typed through, is this Eddie O'Sullivan? We mean that in a loving way, naturally.
Yeah.
Joe, too modest to bring up. You predicted 4-0 last night. I'd have demanded a slot in the breakfast show this morning if it was me. Never mind waiting until 7 o'clock. Well, listen, took a punt. I just...
It's a big show, Joe.
I did not see a way... Because I actually don't... I know they get their attitude is talked about, the Manchester United attitude. I actually don't think their attitude stinks. I know that's a semi-controversial thing to say about Man United right now. I think they start games and are really trying to do well. And I think their apologies, even though they've become repetitive, are well-intentioned and well-meant. Certainly the ones where they give them to camera as opposed to the ones their PR advisors type up. I just think what happens to them in games is they have no plan, they have very little quality, and the house of cards falls and they end up looking like a rabble who don't care. So I never felt at Old Trafford when they lost to City or Liverpool that those defeats were a team not caring or a team that didn't give a damn or not up for it. I just thought they were so outclassed. That's what happened in those games, and I thought, well, they're going to be more outclassed at Anfield. Yeah. So I just thought it's a 4-0.
That's a gradient. Like it's not that you're up for it or you're not. There are probably certain degrees of being up for it and being certainly mentally in tune to a game, and that does drift away. Like the United, I'd agree they do start off on occasion pretty well in games, but it does peter away rather quickly as soon as the second goal went in last night. Like you knew there was, like we were talking about potential cricket scores.
I think it's because they realise, oh God, we've no chance. Like concede after 5, concede the next one. I think they just look around.
But that's certainly an attitudinal problem.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I just think there's nothing they can do. Honestly, they're just that bad. There's nothing they can do, and so one or two heads drop, and then slowly but surely everyone follows. So by the end, it looks horrific. But the reason I didn't even think they could hold on with 5 at the back and somehow only lose 1-0 was because, like, you just knew the way that 5 at the back was pulled apart inside the first 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah. Harry Maguire loves a no man's land step up, doesn't he? Like for every goal, it's like
I think even at this stage, Richie was talking about optics earlier on. That just when he'd be like, I don't care what happens today, I ain't getting left in that position again, and every game without fail. But I think also like that, we're talking about attitude, and definitely attitude is one of the myriad of issues. But like even the debate after the game last night, everybody's trying to put their finger on what's wrong. It's all wrong.
It's all wrong. Yeah, totally.
Everything's wrong.
Totally. Even with a great attitude, even if they went out last night with a perfect attitude, they were still going to lose 4-0 because they were a disorganised mess. Like they'd never even played together, that team. But yeah, Harry Maguire for an absolute rabble. For every goal, like every centre half has a decision to make at some point in a moment of play. And you either, if you're going to gamble, you gamble all out and you squeeze up on someone, or else you drop back and you're not a risk-taking type. And in every instance, Harry Maguire goes for the middle option of, I'll step up a little bit, but not fully commit, but then not be in a position to save the day and drop off either.
He's such an interesting case study. He's such an interesting case study. To see the way his career built, step by step from Hull, Leicester, and kind of and England, and seeing the way it all progressed upwards, and to see it crumble so fast at Manchester United, like to see, like he's completely devoid of confidence.
Yeah, it's shocking.
Like, completely devoid of confidence, and it's a really. We can talk about his wages and he's well paid and he plays for Manchester United and he should do this and he should do that. It's like it's actually sad to watch somebody at that level be unable now to perform simply because their confidence is so badly shot.
Yeah, I wouldn't like. I almost wouldn't blame him if he said, "Right, back strain, end of the season. I can't face it anymore."
You're watching Pogba go off last night.
That could be his last game. Neville
but like Yar's saying, like, oh, come on now. Like, and there was a clip of Wayne Rooney doing the rounds today where he got injured in the game a couple of years ago, and he was like barely able to walk, and is just trying to get through it. And there's nobody on that team that is trying to leg in any way to get involved. But I look at, and we need to obviously bookend all of these conversations, George, you mentioned earlier on. Aren't Liverpool class?
Oh, class, absolutely class.
Just devastating. Like the best team to watch at the minute, without you know, there isn't. I don't think there's any other team out there at the minute that's exciting to look at. And like even looking at the post-match interviews and stuff, the relationship between a player like Thiago and Salah, and it's all beautiful. It's brilliant to watch.
Yeah. The live football this evening, because we are out of time, fellas, is Chelsea Arsenal 7:45, Everton Leicester 7:45, Newcastle Crystal Palace 7:45, and then 8 o'clock we'll be keeping a very close eye on Manchester City at home to Brighton. Richie McCormack, thank you very much.
Nice, lads.
Adrian Barry, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Rich.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
We have ourselves another rollover this evening. Somebody answered the call, gave Barry the right